Welcome everyone to our first mini project. In this task, you'll be asked to create a model inside Power BI, create the following visuals: sales amount by currency, sales amount by month, and a matrix table, which will tell us the sales amount per email address by currency. Also, all visuals should be created using the QA option. Table relationships need to be built, and also we need to create a dynamic dim date table. To begin our task, let's open up Power BI, create a new project, and make sure we save it. I recommend you guys saving it in the following directory. So if we go to the project files of section 3, I've created a folder called completed task. If you open this folder, make sure you save it with a memorable task name. For the purpose of this demonstration, I'll be calling my project task 3. You can save it anything you want. So I'm just going to hit save. Yes, I want to replace it. Okay. So here is the blank canvas. Next thing we need to do is we need to get our data. So hit on get data. And we want to make sure that we click on the Excel icon. So we need to go to project files, data extracts, and section 3, data extract. So we're connecting to the Excel source. Within seconds, we should be able to see all the tables inside this Excel sheet. Here we have it. Got dim currency, dim customer, fact, internet sales. We want to tick all the boxes. Okay. And press load. So now it's going to take some time for the system to load the metadata. Currently it's loaded the metadata. Now it's time for the system to actually start importing the files within the memory of the PBIX file. The fact internet sales would be our meatiest table, so it's going to take probably the longest of all three tables to process and load. So depending on how fast your machine is, this may take anywhere from 30 seconds to a minute and a half. Okay, in our case it was quite fast. So here we have it: dim currency, dim customer, and fact internet sales. Let's check our relationships real quickly. Go to the model section of the Power BI file. I'm just going to hide this, the properties. I'm just going to zoom this in a little bit. So as we can see, we've got the perfect star schema. So we got from dim currency to fact internet sales, one-to-many relationship based on currency key. From fact internet sales, we've got many-to-one, well, one-to-many. Dim customer is one-to-many relationship with fact internet sales based on the customer key. So our relationships are absolutely perfect. It is now time for us to start building our dim date dynamic table. So this is something that should be fairly straightforward. If you're having any issues with that, I recommend you guys rewatch the section that we discussed in our previous lessons on how to build a dynamic dim date table. So the first thing what we need to do is we need to go to new table from the modeling tab. As you can see, this new table will come from a DAX expression. So remember, with the dim date table, we need to make it dynamic. So we need to write some DAX about it. So we don't want to call this table. So I'm just going to start typing in dim underscore date equals. First thing we want to do is we want to add columns inside this table. So we're going to use the first choice from our IntelliSense. So add columns, going to expand this because we're going to be typing in quite a fair few bits of DAX. So add columns, move on to a new row. We want to use the calendar function. So what the calendar function is, it asks for a start date and it asks for an end date, and it builds a sequence of dates between these two. So in our case, we'll be using the ship date from fact internet sales. So what I'm going to type in is min. So we want to have the earliest date from fact internet sales, ship date. Okay, close the bracket, comma, and we also want the maximum date from fact underscore internet sales ship date. Okay, close that. Okay, and we want to hit comma. Moving on to a new row. So now this will give us pretty much the bread and butter. So this will be our date column inside our dim date table. Next thing we want to do is we want to add some attributes, because remember, the purpose of the dim date table is not only to give us all the available dates so we can build month on month views, but we also want to have things like attributes. So let's say we want to know the year, we want to know the month, we want to know the month name rather than a number, we want to know the day of the week. Is it Monday? Is it Tuesday? Is it a quarter? Which quarter is it? All these different combinations, we need to tell our dim table that we want to extract this from our dynamic DAX code. So the first thing we want to use is we want to use year. So let's type in year. As we can see, the IntelliSense is telling us it's asking for a name. So that name stands for the name of the column. So remember, this always needs to be a string. We cannot call out any existing column names. We just need to type this in. Then within the expression, we need to call some sort of function. In our case, it will be year. So it's a built-in function, and it's asking for a date. In our case, this will be the date that we created earlier in this query. So we're going to close the bracket, we're going to hit a comma, and there we have it. Now we've got date and year. Next thing we want to do is we want to add month. So typing in month, okay, comma. Again, we'll be using the month function that's built in within DAX, calling out the date. Okay, that is perfect. So next thing we want to do is hit another comma and move on to a new row. Now it's time for something slightly trickier. We want to call out the month name. So type in month name, close that comma, and we don't actually have a function for month name. So what we want to do here, we want to use the format function. Remember, format function transforms things from numbers to text and vice versa. Using the format function, we can format things pretty much any way we want. In our case, with dates, we cannot have string as a date. So therefore, we're going to use the format function. So within the format function, we are calling out the date. Again, calling out the date. And we want to format the date as month name. So the code for that will be 4 times capital M. Close that. Moving on to day of week. So day of week. Okay. Format, again, date. The code for day of week will be 4 times D. Close that. Next row. Now we want to add the quarter. Format, date, followed by Q. Simple as that. There is no time. There is no 4 times Q. It's just Q. Remember, for the full reference of these code combinations, you can check back our previous lesson on how to build the dynamic dim date table. This is where we discussed, where we showed you the link where you can find all this documentation on the Microsoft website on how to properly format things within your dim date table. And the last thing that we want to add here is year quarter. So year quarter. And again, using the familiar format function, starting with a date, we want to format it as year. So you see, we cannot use the year function here because it will return a different type, a different data type. If we use year, year will actually be a whole number, and we cannot concatenate numbers and strings together in DAX. This is something that the system does not allow us to do. So that's why we're formatting it as text, and we are concatenating it with Q. So Q, will be typing in Q and format again. So what we need to add is the actual quarter, because remember, when we're using the format date, comma, Q, this will return the digit of the quarter. It will not return the Q3, Q4, Q1, etc. It will just return 1, 2, 3, 4. That's it. So that's why we're adding year. We are adding the Q and we are adding the Q number. So again, we need to call out date and we want to format it as a quarter. Okay, close that and our table should be all ready to go. Wait until it's been processed by the engine and look at that. We've got all the columns, all the fields that we wanted to have. Let's check our model very quickly. here's our dim date table. I'm just going to zoom this in so you guys can see it. Okay, so we've got the date. So the next thing we want to do is we want to connect that to our fact internet sales. This will be a one-to-many relationship again from dim date to fact internet sales. The relationship needs to be based on the date and ship date keys. Okay, drag that. And as we can see, the relationship has now been established and we've got our star schema model ready to go for our further data manipulations that will happen within the next video. Thank you.